Good evening and welcome. Starting with our top story, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny's recent arrest has gathered criticism from across the globe. The latest coming in, the EU's top diplomat has said that Russia and the EU's relations are at an all-time low after Navalny's arrest. Listen in.
Certainly our relations are on the severe strain, and the Navalny case is a low point in our relation.
Now, the dip in relations between the EU and Russia was reflected in Russia's foreign minister's statement after the meeting, where he said that Russia considered the EU to be an unreliable partner. Lavrov was commenting on the possibility of EU sanctions against Moscow over its treatment of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny.
We have to recognize that over the last years, our relations have been marked by fundamental differences and by lack of trust. We are seeing each other more than a competitor or a rival, rather than a partner.
With international condemnation mounting, the Kremlin today hit back on US President Joe Biden's call for Navalny's release. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that any hints of an ultimatum are absolutely unacceptable to Russia.
Очень агрессивная и неконструктивная риторика, к нашему сожалению. Нотки какой-то ультимативности вообще неприемлемы для нас. Мы уже сказали, что мы не будем внимать такого рода заявлениям, каким-то менторским заявлениям. Не собираемся этого делать.
Meanwhile, a Russian court has resumed slander trial against the jailed Kremlin critic. He has been accused of maligning a World War II veteran who featured in Russian President Vladimir Putin's promotional videos. His offence carries a prison sentence of 2 years. Navalny has rejected the charges as a political vendetta. This is a separate charge from a fraud and money laundering embezzlement conviction for which the opposition leader was sentenced earlier this week. Meanwhile, an audio clip of the jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has emerged in which he is hitting out at the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Navalny can be heard calling Putin an underwear poisoner, and Navalny said that Putin hated as well as feared him. In an audio recorded before he was jailed, Navalny said, and I quote, "Putin's only method is trying to kill people. However much he pretends to be a great geopolitician, a great some sort of leader of the world, his main grudge against me is that he'll go into history as a poisoner. We will have Vladimir the underwear poisoner," unquote. Now remember, Navalny returned to Russia last month after undergoing treatment for Novichok poisoning in Germany. However, he was immediately arrested upon his return to Moscow. The Russian court later handed him a sentence of over 3 years. Now, we are being joined by our correspondent, Daria Bundeshak, for more on this. Thank you for being with us. Now, there has been global condemnation. The EU's top diplomat has said that Russia and EU's relations are at an all-time low, and the relations are also strained with the US. What is the latest in this story?
Well, the EU foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, called negotiations that he held with his Russian counterpart, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, intense. He said it was an intense discussion and that he conveyed across the call to release Mr. Navalny immediately and to conduct a full investigation into his poisoning. But so far, Moscow has shown no sign that it was going to give in to Western pressure. The West accusing Europe and the US accusing Russia of pressure on an illegal arrest of the opposition politician Alexei Navalny. As you know, the Kremlin spokesperson earlier said that this kind of approach, this language of sanctions and pressure is unacceptable for the Kremlin. And generally, Russian authorities on various levels have been saying that any sort of advice or accusations from Europe or from the US is an intervention into Russian internal affairs. And as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov pointed at, these talks today held in Moscow Moscow with his European counterpart, that Russia at this point is building its daily activities and its policy based on the fact that the European Union is an unreliable partner at this point, at least, but also noting that Russia would be ready for cooperation where it's possible. And earlier, the Kremlin also said that it would be ready to do anything to improve its ties with Brussels. However, it is not going to take any advice on internal matters. Certainly, relations continue to be very tense and spoiled by these recent years of standoff between Russia and the West, with Europe, of course, over Russia's intervention in Ukraine in 2014, and ever since its support for separatists in the eastern parts of Ukraine, as well as over Crimea, and these poisoning cases, not just by of the Alexei Navalny, but earlier of the Skripal family in the UK, and other instances of alleged use of chemical weapons by Russia in Europe. So, of course, this has not been an easy dialogue, but as Josep Borrell has noted, it is important. This visit is an opportunity to discuss all the differences and difference in approaches that Europe and Russia has, and that building a wall of silence is not an option.
Right, Daria. And the Kremlin has also hit back at US President Joe Biden's call for Navalny's release. Dmitry Peskov, we heard him saying any hints of an ultimatum are absolutely unacceptable to Russia. This is another strong statement.
Yes, and unlike the EU, which has not yet implemented these sanctions against, fresh sanctions against Moscow over the Navalny case, the US has now put together a list, and but it has met the same response here in Moscow, that this would be a direct intervention into Russian internal affairs, that if there was such sanctions list put into force, that would be an illegal intrusion into Russian and pressure over Russian judicial system and intervention into Russian domestic affairs. But several top officials on the Foreign Affairs committees of the Russian Parliament, both the upper and the lower chamber, have said, of course, that Russia would be ready to respond. It could implement also some sanctions against the US, a more moderate sort of way, more balanced, not as hype-derived as many Russian politicians say, that they call these anti-Russian sanctions a dull hysteria in the US. And also they said that Russia could implement these sanctions and there will be a response if needed. And so far Russia stands on its point firm that its dealings with the arrested activist, politician Alexei Navalny and his supporters, which have been detained in thousands in the past couple of weekends here, that their dealings with them and the actions of the police were justified, and since those rallies were not sanctions, and therefore all those protesters who have come out to the streets have been acting illegally and should bear the consequences of that action.
Daria, thank you very much for bringing us all the latest coming out of Russia. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.